And thank you, our fellow lovers of love, for joining us on this excursion through the stream of consciousness down the river of tranquility to fill the lake of love.
I like it.
Yeah, I twisted it a little bit. I actually got it right this time, which is a good news for tonight. We have our friend of the show, Max, will be on here in just a second. But it's been a bit of a crazy week. This is my sixth show I've had to prep for this week. The sixth
Good
one.
heavens.
Plus some party duties. It's been a crazy, crazy, crazy busy week. But with Valentine's Day heading up, we figured it was a good time to bring Max back on and talk about relationships through mental health and kind of that journey. And he has a book that I'm about in the middle of the way through. It's a Small Fingernails. Oh, and I'm going to butcher the title, so I'll bring Max on to talk about it. Because I was just, Max, how you doing?
Hey, good to see you, folks.
I was just sitting here, going to bring up the title to your book, and I said it's Small Fingernails, and I knew I wasn't going to get the rest right, so I'd bring you on, let you talk about it a little bit. But before I do, I want to know, we're talking about mental health today, and so I want to let everybody know, if you are dealing with a mental health issue and you kind of don't know what to do, there are resources available. Specifically, there's the National Mental Health Hotline, nationalhealthhotline.org. You got the phone number there on the bottom of the screen. See if my blind self can read it. It's, what is it, 866-903-3787. Did I read that right?
Yeah.
I did. It's amazing. All right, but anyway, if I got that wrong, the link is in the description. The phone number is in the description, and so please, they would rather help you before a crisis than when you're in a crisis. They would happily help you when you're in a crisis, but really, it's pre-crisis is the best time to intervene with yourself. And it's important that we all take care of these things. And Max, it's dealing with your mental health as you growing up into an adult and all the complications that it has and the implications that relationships have, not just on our mental health, but with our mental health. The journey is very strange, and I'm reading your book, and I'm finding it very compelling. It's actually, I was trying to at least skim it, trying to get all the way through so I can get a very good read on it, but I couldn't. It's one of those books where you can't actually skim. You have to actually read, but it's a good read. It's a quick read. It's not long. It's pretty quick. I'm about halfway through, but It's quite compelling. And so, maybe you can tell our viewers and listeners about what it's about.
Okay, sure. It's Small Fingernails, Even Less Love. And as you might gather from the title, it's about love and relationships. Not just, from family to friends, people that you care about, people that you're interested in romantically. And, there are a lot of people in our lives that surround us, right? People that you want there, people that you don't want there, people that you can do something about, maybe something you can't do about that just can be there anyway. And navigating those relationships, all of them, and harnessing, the good energy, the bad energy, trying to block out what you don't want and embrace what you do want and enhance it and amplify it. Life is a journey where you just pass through people, all these people, and some of them you cling on to too long, some of them you don't cling on to enough, some of them you care about, some of them really don't, and where life takes you. And this book is about my journey through they call it pre-dronal schizophrenia, but it's really about right before my break, all the events that led up to getting very sick. And so there's that looming in the distance, this idea that something's going to go very, very wrong. And throughout the book, stuff continues to go wrong, but on a smaller level, and it builds to this fever pitch where eventually I can't do anything about it, and there's no intervention that's really going to help me, and I'm just going to find myself in this new space, and that's the next book, University on Watch. So the book sort of ends where the next book begins. They stand on their own, but life is a struggle. Even in the parts that we like, we find ourselves sometimes struggling. In our mental health, and on a day-to-day basis. And that struggle doesn't have to be a bad struggle. It could be very positive, like can't wait to finish this video game. But there's struggle there, right? You're playing, you're worrying, am I gonna get to the next level? You know, but you know, life is more than a game. Very, very serious. And I wish you all, you know, good luck in getting to that next level.
Yeah, struggle is part of success, right? You very
Exactly.
rarely succeed without some struggle. But I found the honesty of your book. I don't like to use the word brutal honesty, but it was kind of brutal at times. The honesty, it must be very difficult to be that open and honest in paper, writing it out. I mean, I like to think I come out here and I'm as open, as honest as I can be, but you know, it's a very, very honest book. And, you know, it's in one way, it's superficially, at least it seems kind of very typical. It seems like a very typical college student experience, you know,
Yeah.
sex, drugs, rock and roll, that kind of thing.
Ah!
And you know, superficially, but you can, but you know, for those of us who can see, who have experienced, or who can kind of see the undertones, and you laid out very well that there's a looming disaster coming, and it's it's quite a page turner. If I didn't have so much to do, I would have gotten through it long before the time of the show. I actually, at this point, I'm feeling guilty that I didn't get it finished, because I think there's so much more in there that we could talk about that I didn't quite got to yet.
I'd say so. I mean, if you did that much reading in just you know, one sit or a few sits, then you know it's a good read. And there's a lot ahead. So I won't spoil it for you or for any other readers. But like, you know, it's so true. There's always so much underneath the surface, right? You know, sure, a lot of our lives look very similar superficially, right? We watch TV, we listen to music, we go to a restaurant, we do this, we do that. But in our minds, right? All the
Yeah.
stuff that we think about and we work through, it doesn't always look the same. And there's a lot there. And I talk about what's there, you know? And I think a lot of people appreciate that about my writing, because, you know, like you said, superficially, a lot is the same, right? All these townships from New York to LA, they look very similar, right? Houses, roofs, lawns, but underneath that thin veneer, there's a whole lot of stuff, right? And I think of that stuff as the thoughts, you know, and the darkness and the light and all that stuff that no one wants to talk about. And I wonder why. You know, I wonder why.
Well, you share that kind of that inner dialogue, you know, or maybe it's not even the inner dialogue, the combination of that inner dialogue and reality. You kind of share that, I think, is a good way to explain it. Is that you kind of weave that together, and you tell kind of that internal compelling story. And that's something that I think most of us are afraid to face. And it's actually not, for me, I don't actually, explaining why is actually very easy. It's because we're so afraid of rejection.
Ah,
We are so afraid of rejection that
yeah,
I don't want to show the world this ugly side of me,
fear.
what I
Right?
feel is ugly side of me, because I might be rejected.
Yeah.
And so, you know, why it happens actually is quite understandable. But you know, it's people like you, and you know, after reading your book, I'm not nearly as open with my life as I'd like to think I am. You really do just bare your soul, and it's both your you had me at your acknowledgments. The acknowledgments rang with me emotionally. And so knowing we already talked to you, knowing that, having kind of skimmed a little bit of your other book, and knowing that there was disasters coming, I'm walking through this and I'm going, I could put myself there. You know, while my experiences were different. You know, instead of going to college, I went right to work and raising a family. And we had, you know, both of us had traumas and mental health issues that were undealt with, or unacknowledged even. And so that made, you know, what could have been a good marriage into a traumatizing experience, right? And just like, as you were getting to, you know, your experiences with your support group are both positive and negative at the same time, and both those truths are true.
Yeah.
And so much of life is like that. And you don't even realize this until later in hindsight, when you're looking back and going, wow, I'm much smarter now, and whew, I should have done some things differently.
Yeah. Definitely, nothing's perfect, and being okay with irregularities, whatever you want to call it, just the imperfections in our lives, like that, embracing that and saying it's okay. That's okay. That's human, and it's okay to be human. I'm human, so I should be okay with the fact that life is going to be this way because this is what life is, you know. And self acceptance, radical acceptance, whatever you want to call it, you know.
Yeah, you show that you're at the same time your unique experiences, but at the same time it's insanely relatable. I think all of us, especially those of us who've had journeys through mental health or had relationships through mental health that trauma actually made worse, or you bring in past traumas, it's trauma, and you bring those into your next relationship, and then the other person brings their past traumas and their past misperceptions and their mental health. It's amazing anybody can get together and have a functional relationship at all.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. I was just talking about this on another show about trauma, right? So people will say, "What is trauma?" Right? What does that look like? What is it? And I was explaining that trauma can be anything for anyone. The point is, it's damage that gets so bad, so, that it becomes a thing in and of itself, where it's like a scar. We all bleed, right? But not all bleeding keeps us back and stops us from doing things. It gets to the point where it's so bad where like, I can't use my hand anymore, or um, you know, now I can't get to where it is I want to do and do what I want to do with that incident. And that's the type of trauma that sort of I think you find in my books. There's a trauma in each and every one of my books, and I sort of try to show how trauma impacts people in their relationships and only makes things worse. And dealing with that is so important, folks. It's so important.
Because it colors your whole perception of reality. You no longer experience the world essentially correctly. You experience the world through this filter that has value. It's not based on nothing, but you're interpreting. You can't see. It's like
Don't see things for what they are.
putting on. Can't really see that. I talk about Christina. She can't really see me as I am. She has such rose-colored glasses on that my imperfections. My bad hair days, the bad breath. She doesn't notice so much. That kind of thing. It's the rose-colored glasses. But she also gets what we call it doom brain, right?
Yes, we call it doom brain. Everything that happens goes to the worst case scenario. And I have to talk myself down from it. We have a fight, it means we're breaking up.
And we don't even fight that often. We both have bad days when we fight. So, it really does.
And that rarely happens. We rarely fight. So when it happens, it's this big traumatic thing.
And we don't even fight properly. It lasts like 3 minutes for one of us. It's my fault.
It doesn't last. It's really kind of comical.
But it does. Let's get for those 10 minutes. You get the doom brain, and I get this anxiety brain because my world is no longer what I thought it was. And then, no, wait a minute. The world is exactly what I thought it was. Stop telling me lies, you brain. And you go off, you go hug her, and we're kind of set our works. And I've been,
Bye.
and so we get all of that, and so we've kind of developed the tools to not overreact to that. But when you're young and you don't have the tools,
shoot, add mania into there, add drugs, add all these other components that exacerbate, make symptoms worse, then it really is a breakup because you're so out of control. That's all you can really do at that point is just be out of control. So that's why it's so important to be preventative, right? Get involved with your mental health before it's a crisis. That's what I think.
Well, oddly enough, I forget who it was. One of these big speakers, maybe it was Jonathan Haidt or one of those. They were talking about we should discuss emotional health and mental health separately, because you can actually prevent some mental health issues if we start talking about emotional health. and we get people to deal with their emotional health before it becomes a mental health issue. And so, it's hard for me as a as kind of a layperson to kind of say, okay, well, where is that line? But in the generics, it makes sense to me that if we get people to start treating their emotions health better, to start learning how to manage their emotions before they create trauma for themselves or before they create trauma for other people, we can actually prevent a lot. Well, maybe not a lot, at least some of our mental health issues down the road.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we can put a category into each aspect of mental health, right? Our thinking, our emotions, our behavior, but they're all connected. They're all connected. So I would say, like, I don't know. I mean, if I correct my thinking, sure, maybe my emotions might readjust and stabilize. And what does that say about other things? But some people can do that, some people can't. That's why I think advice like that is good for folks that are really need to tune into their emotional health. Like if they have affective or issues with their correcting their moods, then a bipolar person might want to think about that. But for me, when it's all connected, more of a schizoaffective, schizophrenia, I need to really look at my thinking and my emotions, because if I don't bridge that connection, uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but what about nowadays where you're talking about people who are, we'll call them normies, right? We call them the normal people who are
Yeah,
actually
right.
now dealing with emotional and mental stresses that they haven't had to deal with before.
because of COVID.
Yeah, and so maybe to them, bringing it up as emotional health might be a better way to kind of bridge that gap, open that door to get them to start
Sure.
understand it.
Oh,
I think
definitely.
maybe that's the point he was trying to make.
Oh, definitely. Present it to the people who need it, right?
Yeah, and so that way you can, you present it in what is it, like you do with a dog or something? You put their pill inside a hot dog and you give it to them and they eat it. Hey, however you're gonna eat it, man, I'm gonna feed it to you to get you to eat it.
Absolutely.
And so maybe that's a way to package it for normal people who are now starting to deal with emotional health issues. And it's like, hey, let's get with this now before
It becomes a behavioral issue. I agree.
before it becomes something bigger, before you start misinterpreting the world, because we're seeing kind of our culture and society. I was watching a news article earlier about the increase of unruly people on airplanes. Right,
Yeah.
it's like a record number of unruly passengers on airplanes in 2021. It wasn't even close. It was like double. And so, there's reasons for that. There's emotional and mental health reasons for that. It's not just people are somehow meaner now than they were 2 years ago or 3 years ago. There's reasons that this happens, and I think emotional and mental health is far more important now than maybe it's ever been, and at least in my memory, as
Oh,
culturally
absolutely.
speaking. I mean, it's always important individually speaking, but culturally and society speaking, I think it's more important than it's ever been.
Oh yeah, airplanes, any confined space, really. People are acting out and getting violent. There's a huge increase in TV cases over the pandemic because people are trapped with each other in smaller spaces, right? And when there's this issue of proximity, there's always going to be an issue of people fighting and getting in each other's faces and angry, and that's scary. It's scary. We need to air out. Pandemic needs to, come to the point where at least we can air ourselves out and be a little bit more, a little less claustrophobic.
Yeah, it's a couple of years of fear will kind of do that to people. It's going to fray nerves. It's going to create problems, and I think we all need to kind of figure out ways to manage our emotions better than we've been doing. And I think having conversations where people are open and honest with each other. Maybe it doesn't get them to be as open as honest as us, but maybe it gets them to pick up that phone and call a therapist and say, "Can I schedule an appointment?" Or maybe it gets them to be more open and honest with their loved ones, with their friends and their family. Because one of the things that I have noticed in all your writing is how important your family is and has been in your journey through your mental health trials. If you'd had a different family, how different could your outcomes have been? You know,
Huge.
And I feel that because I'm in the exact same boat. If I'd had a different family, a less supportive family, a less functional family, I could be on the street and a statistic very easily, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My family has been there from the very beginning to the very, to today. And it's, because I've been so open and honest with them about my emotions and about my thinking, they've been able to tune in to me and figure out, what's going on a lot easier. I think, it's harder for family when people are closed off and blocked off with where they're not able to say what's going on. Family can be like, wait, what's happening with him? They can be maybe fearful or not intervene in the right way. But I've always tried to coach my family through how to intervene with me, through my writing, through talking with them. Hey, mom, hey, dad, when I'm not feeling this way, please come approach me like this, or maybe we can have a conversation in this sort of manner, and telling them exactly what my needs are emotionally. you know it has been very helpful. I try to be as open and honest as possible, because that allows people to approach me in ways that are a lot healthier, and intervene without incident, right? But they're great. They have a lot of love and compassion, and want the best for me. And when we want the best for everyone around us, usually things end up better than not, right?
Yeah. I mean, you get up, I have a belief that, there's a fundamental belief, not just in physics, but in all of life. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So you put love out there, you will get love back eventually. You may not be able to kind of measure it. You may not know it comes back to you. It's not linear necessarily, but it will come back because that's just how life works. And so if you put negative stuff into the world, the negative stuff's going to come back to you. So if you put positive stuff into the world, if you try and become a better human being, then the world in some way will reflect that back, and will reward you for it. Is the wrong term. It's going to reflect you back, because it's not a reward. It's just how the world functions. It's
Yeah.
how evolution works, or however you want to describe it. It's how karma works. It's how God works. It's how evolution, whichever your thing is, you can describe it however you want. But we have eons that show that that's how it works. The mechanism behind it, believe what you want. But it's pretty clear at this stage that that's how it works. And so being kinder to each other, being nicer to each other, and that includes, hey, understanding yourself.
Yeah.
If I was 35 before I understood I had an anxiety disorder, and then you go back in life and you say, when did it start? I don't know. I was in elementary school, first, second grade. Would rather, risk peeing my pants, wetting my pants, than raise my hand and say I need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any logical sense, but disorders don't make sense.
No.
And so, so it goes back at least into elementary school, if probably as long as I've been alive. I'm kind of suspecting. And it's just something inherent in me. And so I've been living with that anxiety disorder. And man, did it make me misinterpret the world and live as a hypocrite, kind of unknowingly. But once you kind of discover it, you go, oh, well, crap, now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You didn't really intend to live life as a hypocrite, but you were. And so, and so you've got to go, eh. And so now I have this extreme dislike for hypocrisy, because I know what it does to a human being. I know what it does to your self-worth. And so it's just,
is it hypocrisy, or is it misunderstanding? You misunderstood, people misunderstood you, and you misunderstood yourself. Is that hypocrisy, or is that just a lot of misunderstanding and confusion?
Well, it's when you fundamentally misunderstand the world, and so then you interpret the world, and you essentially impose perspectives on other people that they don't really intend. You have to accept responsibility for that.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to beat myself up with a hammer over it, because kind of thing. I'm not going to overly beat myself up with it, but
yeah,
I'm going to accept. Yes, that was me. I have to accept responsibility for it, and I can be better. And so you just try not to do that. You try to become a better human being, and you eventually get to a person that no longer recognizes that person. You acknowledge that it was you, but you can no longer really recognize that human being. I was there. I understand it, but that's not me. That's not really who I was. I was just this massively confused, anxiety-ridden, had no idea what the hell was going on person. And until I broke for my third, what was my third one? I guess it was my third emotional breakdown where I finally had to say, I can't do this anymore. I have to fundamentally change. Where I started on the journey out from the depths of hell. Yeah. So it's these journeys through life and through our relationships, because how many relationships did I destroy along the way? The other person has responsibilities in it. They played their roles. They did things, but you have to accept yours. And it's not an easy thing to accept, but you have to.
Yeah. You do. If you want to grow and mature beyond your years and experience better things, you have to.
And as Valentine's Day is coming up, and people are sitting here, we've got divorce rates are highest at this time of year, and you've also got people who are essentially, what is it? Reaffirming their love.
Yes.
For one another. This discussions about getting through journeys with mental health, especially now when, what is it? 19% of the population has some form of anxiety disorder, and you start adding in everything else, you're talking about a third, 40% of the country, right? It's having these issues, and we don't acknowledge it, that this deeply affects our relationships and deeply affects our families and deeply affects our cultures. And, it's people like you who are willing to be honest about it can actually tell a story for millions of people. Other people don't have to tell their story now, but they can have a relate. This is kind of, in general scope, my story. Yeah. And it's very powerful. So what you think, Max? You want to hang around for some questions?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right.
I'm going to step out.
All right. She's going to go take a step out real quick.
Should we both take a step out for a second, or?
What's that?
Should we both take a step out for 1 second, or?
Oh, yeah, if you want to.
Okay. All right. I'm going to step out for 1 second.
All right. There's I just keep the topic going. There's in the description for his book on Amazon, the very first sentence actually got me. Sometimes love finds us. Other times, love is a trauma that hurls us into the very fabric of our lives. And that's a fundamental truth, whether it's for good or bad. Finding the love of your life can be an extremely traumatizing experience. It's maybe trauma for good, but it's can be a very traumatizing experience. 1 minute you're going about your life, you're enjoying drinking beer, hanging out with your friends, you're on a career path, and next thing you know, all you can think about is this girl with the beautiful blonde hair, or the gorgeous purple eyes, or the laugh you can't get out of your ears, or the smile that appears in your eyes every time you close them. These are moments that we all experience in some way. And, sometimes it's a good way. Sometimes, it brings you love and compassion and passion. And other times, it brings you despair. Love. Talking about love. How it can smack you like a trauma.
It can be the most disastrous thing on the face of the planet, and yet it's also, at the same time, it can be the most thrilling thing in our existence.
It can be a trauma that is both good and bad, but yet we also can't really function without it. We can't function without love. Life is a kind of a meaningless existence if you don't have it in some form. You know, if you don't have the love of friends or family, it doesn't have to be romantic love. You know,
No.
but you have to have some kind of love in your life. Otherwise, you just kind of wither away. I think so. You know, we were talking about that first sentence of your Amazon description. It got me with it's a very well written. Did you write that? I'm assuming you wrote that there.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It's funny because you never know what people are going to really appreciate and what's really, like these major statements, authors make. And that was just, at the very end, I needed a description. I wrote something up, and that's what took. That's what people loved hearing. And there's a truth to it. I know rereading it now, but like, I never know what I'm going to write.
That's one of those things you need to put on a meme and a nice little graphic. I'm going to make one up. Which thing do you want? We put Jay Peters or Max Guttman on?
Jay Peters. Jay Peters.
All right, we'll do that.
Thank you.
You never know what to do with writers.
I never know myself. It's just,
okay. Because
weird.
You never know what to do with writers. Was Maxwell Clemens or Mark Twain? It always depended. Was he writing for the newspaper or was he writing a book?
Exactly.
You just never know. All right. How are your relationships impacted in adulthood when a teen? Oh.
How are your relationships impacted in adulthood when, as a teen, you were stigmatized because of having an emotional disorder? Well, I came from a time where you were just a bad kid. They didn't diagnose you, and so I didn't have this. I had the stigma in high school of being a bad kid, but so I didn't have that. What about you guys?
I was always just shy. We didn't diagnose people back in the 80s. 70s, late 70s and 80s when I was in school. But he was a shy kid who just needed to apply himself. Yeah, that kind of thing. That was mine. So I don't know how much harder I could try when school was an awful, traumatizing experience. So it's a strange thing, isn't it, Max?
It is. I had emotional stuff in high school. It's one of my books out there, Wales High School First Diagnosis, all about my experiences of getting sick in high school. And I had emotional issues, and that definitely impacted things later on. When I was in college, I was sort of deciding, should I be on meds again? Do I need to go back on meds? Should I still see a therapist? And the answer was yes. Get connected to a therapist right away. Because later on, before like the stuff you're reading about, this precursor stuff, became really serious, it was even more important for me to be connected to a therapist because, like, read earlier for that prevention blurb for that hotline, the earlier the better. You have to nip things before they escalate because mental health always escalates if you don't take care of it. Things get worse very quickly sometimes. And if you don't act now, sometimes I don't want to say it's too late, but things could get out of control to the point where an earlier intervention could have really been very beneficial.
Yeah, I think me and Christina, I know that once I realized my daughter was having issues with anxiety, we kind of made her aware of, okay, this is what you're experiencing. I can't tell you how it's going to manifest because you're different than me, but we can prepare you for the manifestations. We can be open with you so we can help her through it. And so she didn't have nearly as traumatizing experience through school. And I know you've had to deal with this issues as, not as going through school, but having to maybe early intervention would have helped you with dealing with your.
Yes, early intervention would have prevented me from self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. That was an odyssey.
I think that's one of the things. How many people are actually attempting to self-medicate when they're using drugs or alcohol or sex, trying to, whatever their addiction is. How many times they're just trying to self-medicate is essentially what they're trying to do. And that's something that isn't discussed enough, I think.
It isn't discussed enough for a lot of reasons. How many people are doing that because they can't get connected to a therapist or a doctor, or don't have the right insurance, or they're not getting the meds that they need, so they look elsewhere. It speaks to a whole host of issues.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. All right. What do you have next, Lubby? I think this next one's for you.
People who have bipolar disorder, are they more comfortable being with others who have the disorder? Also, do they feel more at ease with that person while withdrawing and alienating themselves from other people who are not bipolar? I have friends of all kinds. They have their own issues. Some are normies. It kind of never really comes up. It's not an issue, really. Uh, I have joined support groups, and so I can share my journey and I can hear about others, and not feel so alone in my struggles, and I get to hear successes. That's always wonderful, and celebrate with people their milestones. It's kind of a mixed bag there.
Yeah. Anxiety. I don't like being around people. So you get the anxiety disorder. He doesn't like being around people, but you asked for bipolar, so I'm not sure. Do you have, as a kind of a professional in that, do you have any comments on that for you, Max?
Well, I call it my personal caseload, as opposed to my professional caseload. I don't get paid for those folks, but they're my friends, and definitely, even when engaged with them at the diner conversation, we'll talk about, I'll hear, oh, they don't get it because they don't have this, or they don't deal with these issues, they don't understand. And a lot of people, I think, these normies, right, they don't understand because it's you don't understand it until you're going through it. But I think that's why you have that personal connection, a special connection with these people that are both struggling with the same thing. Definitely. But would I ever not have a friend or rule out a friend that isn't struggling? No, friend's a friend. That's another connection, and they bring themselves something special, right? Everyone brings
Exactly.
their own. Yeah. See.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a difference, being around people who have like experiences, so don't feel so alone. But you don't want to ever just kind of limit yourself to just that, because you lose the color of life. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Okay, I'm 17 and I'm pretty sure I have a UTI, but I'm scared to go to the doctor with my mom because I feel like I might be pregnant. What should I do? Oh, my dear, she's not going to kill you.
No, we got this. So we did a UTI thing before, but it wasn't with the pregnancy attached to it. Now, we're not doctors, but even I, the ignorant blowhaired I know that doesn't go to the doctors enough, knows that UTIs are bad enough by themselves and dangerous enough by themselves if left untreated. UTIs with the combination of a pregnancy is insanely dangerous.
Oh God.
So get your UTI taken care of. See if there's a pregnancy. It likely won't be as bad as you think talking to your parents, but even if it is, the resources out there to deal with it if you absolutely gets to that kind of traumatic thing. The last thing you need to do is make a bad situation even worse by adding infection into it.
Yeah.
I think anything I stated wrong there, Max?
No. And if you have a UTI when you're an older adult too, like 70s, 80s, or in a nursing home, that has to get checked out too, because it can look like you're dying. It can look like you're in the actively dying process. It happened to my father. We thought he was dying. He was in a hospital bed, prepared for death, until we realized he had a UTI. And when we cleared up, he was right back driving again, back to his old self. So UTIs of all kinds have to be looked at very, very quickly before it gets so serious.
Yeah, so don't wait on these kind of things.
Yeah.
Okay, my mom is passing. It's been a while since we talked. On Facebook, I see a post from my niece saying she's getting her estate. What should I do?
Well, first you call your mother and you deal with that, because your mother is passing. Unless there's some serious past issue, and this is just kind of normal, we've grown apart, drifted away. You call your mother and you deal with that. And until you don't care about the estate, your freaking mother is dying. What's wrong with you?
Right.
It's it's really, that's what you're going to worry about. I think and if there is some kind of trauma involved, then you don't want to be tied to the estate anyway. So just deal with the death of your mother and let everything else work itself out.
Right.
Because don't create a problem that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that pretty much. I'm pretty good at these kind of things at this. I think that's a good one. I think you don't want to make it worse. I think is what you want to do. And your mother is dying, and what we wouldn't give to have a few more days with a past loved one. So to take the time now to don't regret it later. That's my suggestion. Okay.
Okay, have you ever had a coworker who lived a secret life? Yes, and it was awful. She was living with a guy, and she involved me in her dates with other guys. And he called me one time. Where is she? She's in the bathroom. That was awful.
Oh, well, everybody has a secret life. But it's none of your business. Oh my God, I wasn't expecting that kind of response. Yeah, Lubby really did have somebody with a secret life there, didn't she?
Wow.
I'm not going behind closed doors. All kinds of weird things happen, and if they don't tell you, it's because it's none of your business, and you're going to go about your lives. But if they're involving you in their secret life, I suppose you have to make a decision, right, Max? I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I had to tell her I wasn't comfortable with it anymore.
That is not an easy conversation, is it?
No, and she was my boss.
Oh, that's. So how'd that one go?
We weren't so friendly after that.
Yeah, I suppose not. Do you have any advice for how to approach a conversation like that, though, Max? Because telling somebody you have to have a conversation and tell them it's you're not comfortable. How to approach that is a more difficult proposition,
very strange, especially a work relationship like that. Because a work relationship is there's also a written procedure around that, and that's when you have to go to an HR person right away if you feel like you're in any sort of danger. But I've been in work relationships with supervisors and other folks, and if it stays well, it stays good, it's okay. And I've had friendships that have grown out of that, and long-term friends now, and it's been beautiful. But there are other times when it could go very, very sour very, very quickly, and you want to get the help of an HR person right away before you lose your job or things happen. So you watch the direction, feel it, feel the vibe. Is it going in a good place or is it not? And get ahead of it before things dip. But any type of relationship that you have, you always want to be as open and as honest as possible. That's why I think that involving people in a lie or in a in a story is always a very precarious situation, because people are nebulous and they're always moving around. You never know when that lie you're gonna get caught up in that lie, right? Yeah. For kids too, right? It's a good lesson. Don't tell lies.
Yeah. The tangle that we weave, right? There's a reason that's a saying. Yeah.
Exactly. There's songs about it too. Be very careful with lying, because if it's not really calculated to the umpteenth level, people are going to find out and get angry.
Yeah. Well, and all of that, let's be faced. If you're lazy like me, honesty is just freaking easier.
Yeah.
It's just easier in the long run. It's just way less complicated. It's got way less. It's freaking easier. So just be honest. But if it's none of your business, it's none of your business.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's kind of what it is.
Okay. My daughter is 16 and wants a car. Everyone in her school has really nice cars. What car do you recommend for a 16-year-old with wealthy friends? This is for you, honey. I know you're going to love this.
Well, see, I'm old school. You buy a Beetle, it's got 6 different colors because it's got all kinds of different parts attached to it.
They're just going to get in an accident.
So you got to hit something. But hey, you don't buy your child a car to keep up with the Joneses. You buy them a car because they have a need and they've earned the and they've shown the responsibility for it. That's why you get them a car.
Exactly.
And you get the kind of car that you can afford. If you can afford a nice car, by all means, buy them a nice car. It's less likely to break down. It's probably safer. But if a car's been built in the last 10 years, it's generally as safe as any other on the road. And if it's been well maintained, it's been well maintained, and it's probably as safe as others. You can have mechanics get it checked out, and you do the maintenance. And so the question is the child prepared to drive a car? That's really the question. Forget everything else. Forget everything else. That can be dealt with. It's just, is the child prepared? Because you don't want to hold them back. If they're ready, you want to let them run, right, Max? You want to let them go. But if they're not, you're not doing them any favors. And so, they have a Mercedes, so we have to buy them one. That's setting up a bad example for them for the rest of their lives. And you just don't want, I don't think that's something we all should be trying to avoid.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Any got anything to add,
No.
Max?
Well, anytime you look to other people, what they have and what they're doing, as a meter stick for what you do in your life is a mistake. You live your own life, and what's going on with you is what's, are you prepared for this? Like you said, am I ready to drive? Am I ready to take this on? Hell, if I asked myself those questions years ago, I was not ready to drive. Or maybe the first year, but then after that I sort of got sick. And then what do you do? It was a weird situation for me because when I was high school I was driving all over, but after a while I was finding myself misplacing my car, losing my car, car accidents, must have had over 10 cars over the 15 years. That's ooh. Yeah. So I don't even know where to go with that. All I know is
just make sure they're ready for it, and be prepared because they're gonna hit something, and just you kind of hope it's nothing that gets anybody hurt. That's what they do.
How responsible you are for your own behaviors is a very difficult thing if you don't have the insight behind it. So it's about insight and self-awareness, and sometimes for teenagers that's a hard thing. Adults sort of have to assess that. And being in a good relationship with a trusting parent is probably going to be your best idea of, how ready you are.
Yeah. Well said. Okay.
When I tell my son to pause this video game to come eat, he shouts at me that he can't pause this game. I know that you can pause video games.
Yeah.
What do I say to him?
Okay, well, first, actually, the pausing of the video games isn't actually the issue, because there are online games that they're playing like first-person shooters online with their friends. They actually can't pause it, but it's also not relevant. If you have told him 20 minutes advance, dinner's in 20 minutes, the game goes off and you come sit down for dinner.
Yeah.
Whether you can pause it or not. I can understand wanting to show some mutual respect for their activities and your dinner, and you want to show some mutual respect, but that's just, there's dinner's in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and so you give them enough warning so they can finish their round or finish whatever they're doing, and then they can come to dinner. That's kind of how I did it, because my children's mother would flip out every time they would go, I'm in a game. I'm die caramba. And she would drive her absolutely crazy. And then I'd have to deal with it. And so that was not, there was problems in that marriage. I'm just saying. But I enabled them, and, I have my own roles in that, so I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying that's what happened. It's just, my thing is you don't want to set up a fight with a teenager, but at the same time you have to have clear boundaries, and you have to know what to expect, so you can actually manage that difference. You can give them the respect they need as teenagers becoming adults by giving them kind of fair warning, but fair warning is fair warning, right? Am I off base here, Max?
No, time management, planning, absolutely. That's something to be learned too by a video game. Preparing, 15 minutes till dinner. All right, as a kid, I got to learn, or a teenager, what time means, right, and how to manage that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I think that's probably the best option. But it actually seemed like we weren't too bad. This is a kind of a new, the way the question was phrased, it seemed like relatively a new problem, and so I think if you intervene properly now, you don't create a bigger problem later on, which is, we've dealt with questions that are much bigger problems later on. And those are much harder to deal with. I can go to counseling now. That's a much harder problem to deal with.
Okay, if a family denies their children candy, what is the consequences of this later in life? Do these people learn to fear and dislike candy? We didn't have a lot of candy, and I ate chocolate every flipping night.
Well, I don't think there's a straight answer to it. I don't think there's a straight answer. Some kids will respond differently, will take to it and not mind eating, celery, and other kids will feel deprived, and then they will look for every opportunity to eat candy. Right? There's not a automatic response.
What is the question? Is it about just eating candy? And
Yeah, if you deprive your child of candy, will they have some kind of negative reaction to candy later on?
oh, oh, I have a chapter about this in the book you're reading. It's
Yeah.
called Sugars, Fats, and Sweets, but it sort of deals with a slightly different rationale for wanting candy. But the same thing. If you deprive yourself of it, I think if you repress any urge, it's gonna come back in very different, very maybe sometimes scary, confusing ways. And if you are take things in moderation and relearn how to regulate and moderate all of your impulses in a healthy way, then just about doing anything's okay. There are things I've done that I'll never do again because I did in microdoses, and I learned, oh, this is not for me. Oh, I like this, but maybe too much of this isn't good either. So that's sort of how I've dealt with that over the years.
Yeah, so when you're dealing with kids and candy and what to give them, what to not, it's my thing is I don't want to set up rebellion,
Right.
and so you want to make sure they have the freedom to make choices in a kind of a controlled format.
Right.
And so I never really restricted them from candy or video games or what movies they were going to watch, but they had to accept the consequences. Like if you got scared because you watched a scary movie that was above your above
your pay grade,
above your age, well, you're going to be scared. Your dad's not going to get much sympathy from Papa, and so y'all kind of learn that. And
why you want to show them what scary is? You show them what scary is first. Do you like this? How does this feel in a small, right, restricted, controlled way? And then you explain to them, well, this is only incrementally scarier. How do you think that's going to feel? And you know what I mean? Like you have to frame it, right? And show them, experience it in a small way so they can judge for themselves sometimes. Well, if it's scarier than this, I don't want to do it. No. That's how I do it. Even with things that are too what they call too spicy. Oh, that's spicier than this. Okay, I don't know, not for me.
Yeah. Well, we always did when my kids were watching TV and movies. We always let them know that it's not reality. Sometimes it can reflect reality, a mere reality, but it's not actual reality.
Yeah.
And so I think that helped them when it comes to dealing with scary movies or concept or goofy concepts, whatever it is on TV. They always kind of got it. Okay, it's not quite real. Even if it seems really real, it's not quite real. And we always had an open conversation with the kids, and so I think that always helps. When you're always having a conversation with your children, they talk to you about these things, and so they don't actually get the wrong impressions imprinted in their head. Yeah. And I think so. That's if you're gonna restrict your kids from having candy or from watching TV or whatever it is, you've got to make sure they understand why you're doing it, and that's gonna be the best way to approach it. I think you can't just tell them no. You have to explain to them why. Okay.
Okay, is it worth it for a parent to work full-time but spend the whole paycheck on daycare for their children? Wouldn't it make sense to just stay home with the kids? Not everyone is cut out for
home. Well, it also depends if you're on a career path. Just because you're not, you're not making enough money now to just cover the expenses. In 5 years, you may be making twice what you're making now. But just until you get that experience, you're not going to do that. And so what you're doing is you're deferring. You're deferring your gratification. You're deferring that time for the future endeavor. But also, if you're working at a grocery store as a clerk and you're just barely making enough to pay, Maybe not. There's no single answer to a question like this. Everybody has to understand what their personal and family goals are and how it works in with them. There's just not a single answer, because not all questions have financial answers. Even though it's a financial question, the answer may not be financial. It may be emotional. It may be career-wise. It may be, who knows? There's 100 different reasons that someone could decide to work.
Sometimes you can bring your emotional stuff to a financial counselor. I sat with a financial counselor once, and just like my book, I laid it all on her. I'm talking about my disability. I'm talking about my parents, my family. Why that credit card looks like that, what that incident was, and then asked her, very honestly, given what I just told you about my life and what it looks like, what do you think I should do here? And at first she got to take a sip of coffee and take a breath, or maybe a Xanax. But after that, she told me, no, that credit card's not for you. And you know what I mean. So or here's a set of options that are maybe more realistic. And given your life circumstances, got to be honest with people in our lives, from the financial planner to the person as prescribing your meds to whoever it is in your life. The more you let out. In a way that makes sense, the more I think appropriate the responses you're going to get back are.
Yeah, well, yeah. No one can give you decent advice if they don't know
what's going on. Yeah,
it's like telling your doctor, my leg hurts, but you don't tell him that you hit it with a hammer. He's going to have a little hard time helping you. These things are kind of simple. Okay, what do we got next?
Is it true that 144 hertz gaming monitor, so just HD, what is that?
How do I put this question in the cut?
Gaming monitor, so just a marketing gimmick, since human response times are much higher.
I don't think I meant to have this question in there, but the answer is yes and no. If you're a high-end gamer or a videophile, it can make a difference. If you're a regular person who just uses work applications and watches the web, you're not going to tell. So that's the answer.
Okay.
That's good.
What should I do about my 21-year-old son who doesn't go to school, doesn't have a job, and doesn't do chores, and just goes out and plays games with his friends all day? He sounds a little lost.
He sounds a bit lost. It's now, what do you do about it is the difficult question. My guess is he's got some kind of emotional, not a mental health problem. Depression is the easy answer, but my guess is there's probably something deeper. What do you think, Max?
Well, my question is that impacting his life in a negative way? Is he okay with that? Does he have the financial resources to do that? I'd love to do that. Oh my God. I wish I did that. But I couldn't. I didn't have the money. I needed to do other things. I had passion. I had interests. I wasn't lost. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do other things. But if that's okay for you and that's working for you and you love seeing your friends and you love just hanging out and that's not interfering with any of your goals in life, that's what you want to do. You want to chillax for life? Do what you want to do. I always tell people not everyone's life is, moving in direction A or direction B. Sometimes it's okay to be what you want to do, and if there's nothing interfering, if you don't feel held back, and be you.
Yeah, I guess the question is, what happened? How did he become 21 and sitting on your couch? Was he just in school? Has he been on the couch since he was 18?
Right.
There's not enough. There's probably not enough information in this particular question.
Yeah.
Has he experienced a job layoff? Or
yeah. Asking that question's concerned.
Yeah, is there some emotional component that we just don't understand?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we got time for one more, I think.
One more. Okay, I get to pick.
You get to pick.
How upset would you be as a parent if your 16-year-old high school daughter was caught by police skinny dipping with a mixed group of friends at a nearby quarry?
I'd be impressed because I don't think my daughter would get naked in front of a bunch of people, to be honest. So, but we're fairly open around this house. We wouldn't, it wouldn't bother me all that much. Being dumb enough to get caught by the cops would bother me more than this.
I'd be bothered that you got caught.
Yeah.
How'd you morons get caught? What'd you guys do? Yes, I think that's. But I'm a pretty hippie parent, so I'm not entirely sure I'm the best person to ask this question. What do you think, Max?
No, I'm with you there. Why are you so vulnerable with being exposed and out there? Be careful. Protect yourself. If you're doing an activity, that people maybe think is questionable, as long as you're safe, be safe doing it. Don't allow yourself to be so vulnerable and out there that everyone is going to know the details of your life. And possibly put you at risk of other issues happening.
Yeah, but assuming it's just skinny dipping,
Right.
where kids are just skinny dipping. I mean, we used to do far more dangerous stuff. We used to swim across the river with a basketball as a flotation device to use the rope swing that was on the other side. And this is the Sacramento River. This is not a small little stream. So if they're just skinny dipping, they're good. Now, a quarry, I think it was in a quarry or something. It's probably not.
You got to be careful with the rocks.
With not world's greatest idea, but
yeah,
it's probably a popular swimming hole at this point. It's probably relatively safe. But that's it. If the quarry thing is relatively safe, stop being dumb and getting caught. That would be my suggestion. If you're gonna punish them for being dumb to getting caught, not for actually doing the skinny dipping. But punish them by making them mow the lawn or wash dishes or something. Don't become overly abundant, right? That's something. Punishment fits the crime kind of thing, right? Yeah. All right, that's all the time we have tonight. We want to thank Max for being here. You can find Max at healthaffaires.org.
Blog.
Health Affairs. Oh, mentalhealthaffairs.blog. Yeah, me and my bad eyes. Gonna be fixed here before too long.
Wait.
Nice one. We will see you all next week. We have a happy Thanksgiving. I knew I was gonna screw that up. I knew it. Last week that at some point I was gonna call Valentine's Day Thanksgiving. I don't know why, but it was gonna happen. We'll see if it happens again next week. We're gonna have our Valentine's Day show where we get all hippy dippy and lovey dovey and frilly willy. Just days before we head out on a lovely trip for vacation, but we will come with you. I think we'll try to come to you live from the beaches of Hawaii. That'll be nice. We'll try. We'll try. Max, we'd like to have you back on a future show. We'd love to have you on. Great friend of the show here. It was nice time.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for staying up late. We greatly appreciate it. We really do. We know it's late for you over there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful everything.
V-Day. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you.
Everybody, good night. And for me and Lubby, and Max, please remember to love everybody.
Good night.